Hey there, Cube Nation. Welcome back to another Prep for Life YouTube Live event. As promised last week, today we're talking about 72-hour emergency kits. And here's what inspired this. Part of it is that we have this ability to freeze dry our own food, make it shelf stable, really light, easy to carry around, easy to store. And so we've talked about general food storage for a long time. But today, it's all about 72-hour kits. Before we get into it, let me remind you that we've got people watching the chat session, people paying attention, so that if you have questions, just type in. Let us know what questions you might have about what we're talking about. If there's general questions about the Cube freeze dryer, we'll try and answer as much as we can while we're here. Also, if you have any other things that you would like to see us talk about in these events, questions, big topics that you want to know about, let us know. We have our own topics we're going to keep mentioning, but we'd like to pepper in yours as well. So let's talk about the 72-hour kits. Okay, here's what really gave me the catalyst for wanting to talk about this. And that is that several years ago, I went and I purchased 72-hour kits, each one for my family members. So I bought 5 of them, and I think they were $80, maybe $80 to $100. I don't remember exactly. And I was so excited about it. And then when I received them, I thought, really? This is what you expect me to live on for 3 days? Okay, I guess it's barely living. And let me give you a little bit of a story here. Here's the menu of the food that I was given in this 72-hour kit. Day 1, breakfast, 1 granola bar. That's it, 1 granola bar. Lunch, 1 stick of beef jerky and a juice box. So we're now at, what, 30 calories? Okay, maybe a little bit more, but you get the idea. Dinner is 1 freeze-dried ravioli meal off the shelf purchased. And then there are 6 pieces of candy, hard candy. That was the entire day's menu. So, day 2, 1 trail mix bar and a juice box. Lunch, again, 1 stick of beef jerky and 1 fruit snack. Dinner is a ramen noodle soup and 6 pieces of candy for the day. You get the idea. It wasn't any better on day 3. As I looked at this menu, I thought, there's maybe 2,000 calories for the entire 3 days. Okay, I guess I won't die during that time. But when I opened up and looked at them, I thought, wow, there better never be an emergency, because we might wish we were dying if that's all we were eating. Now, I understand that the reality is that food would allow me to survive for the duration of the 3 days. Oh, and by the way, included in that 72-hour kit was 1 12-ounce bottle of water per person. And so that's what we had to live on. I recognize if you're in a hurry and you just got to grab something, that's probably okay. However, now that we have the ability and the technology, why don't we make something out of this that in case of an emergency, we actually can survive and have the energy to do all the things that are required in an emergency. Remember, it's a high stress situation. you're going to be burning calories faster than normal anyway. And why not eat foods you already know and like? So, in fairness, I will tell you that in part of that emergency kit, there was a very small first aid kit and the cheapest pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt that you could ever think. And that was it. Oh, and one of those ceramic or tin camping mugs so that you can drink the water that's already gone the first half of the day. Anyway, so let's talk about it. In this box, by the way, this is just a bigger ammo box that you can find on Amazon or other places. Army surplus stores sell them. The reason I got this one is because it's got a gasket in it to allow it to be a little more water resistant. Even though everything inside here is already waterproof in sealed bags and everything, this is food and enough water to rehydrate all of that food for 3 days, and real meals as well. Let me show you. So a bowl to eat in, utensils. I told you there was everything I needed to eat in here. We've got bags like this. This is beef stew. Who wouldn't want beef stew? Or we've got bananas for snacks. So again, healthy snacks that provide energy that you need in an emergency situation. Yogurt bites. Again, some protein. Things that you actually want to eat as a snack. We've got some of these in vacuum sealed bags so you can see, but this is eggs. Okay, this is 4 raw eggs, by the way, and it takes 5.5 ounces of water. Really easy to carry around, really light. Well, let's see, what else do we have? We have a breakfast skillet, which is hash browns, bacon, and eggs, seasoned just the way I like it. It takes 4 ounces of water. Other things in here, there's another breakfast skillet, so a repeat. Here's a lunch or dinner, apricot chicken and veggies. This was just leftovers, guys, from a meal that we had at our house that I then freeze-dried and sealed. Sits in my storage. Well, now it's in a 72-hour kit. Peach cobbler, by the way, on my list in my 72-hour kit. Dessert was a Jolly Rancher. Now, I'm going to have peach cobbler. Jamaican jerk chicken with black beans. Again, leftovers from a meal months ago. In fact, it was more than 2 years ago. Chicken pot pie soup that we had in 2022, still good. So all of these meals here are in my 72-hour kit. Can you imagine now being able to eat foods like this? Now, if your neighbors and whatnot show up and they've got 1 stick of beef jerky for lunch, you're gonna be wanting to hide in the trees to stay away from them, right? But these are foods that you're actually going to want to eat. When I opened this up here again, I looked at this and thought, man, I need to manufacture an emergency. Some of this food sounds really good right now. Maybe because I haven't had lunch yet today. But the point is, I know that I'm going to have the calories I need in foods that I know are healthy because they're ones that my family already had and we liked them. We don't typically freeze dry the meals that none of us liked. But the point is that here I have built now the food for a 72-hour kit for 1 person here. I'm going to talk about what all the rest of these bags are here in just a second. but just the food here. And it essentially was free, right? Because it was just leftovers. Some of these things, except for maybe the bananas and the yogurt that I made specifically for snacks, but so much cheaper. I'm thinking that there's maybe $15 worth of food in here. The eggs I got before there was a crisis, so they were cheap. Nowadays, that's probably $15 worth of eggs, right? But I have a whole bunch of these sitting on my shelf, so I don't care how much eggs cost today. And things like the beef stew, regardless of what the emergency is, imagine smelling beef stew when you're in this emergency, okay? Now, I've talked with some of you at trade shows, home shows, on the phone, chatted with you, and one of the things that comes up so often is, great, now you've got all this food, you have to have water to go with it. And we haven't gotten much into water storage. That's not our specialty, right? We build freeze dryers and we build them really well. But as I researched around, I found some people out there that are putting water in Mylar bags, filtered water in clean Mylar bags, and then marking the dates on them so that they can know just how old they are. But here's one of the things I learned about stored water. Similar to food, if it's in a bottle that's open to the light, then it degrades, right? It becomes stale a lot easier and faster. However, water that's stored in these stay fresher longer, and they're sealed. They can't be contaminated. We don't sell these, but I found people out there making these for just this kind of a situation. Now, how long will it last? I don't know, but I'll probably come back and change them out in 5 years or so. Even if I had to dump these out and boil them, if I was worried about it, so be it. By the way, one thing as a side note about stored water that people have a problem with is it tastes stale, right? But I learned that just dumping it between two containers 4 or 5 times reoxygenates the water. I didn't know this until recently, and I tried it out of a big barrel that I had water in, pulled the water out, and I knew that it was clean because I had treated it before, but I dumped it back and forth between a few containers, tried it, and it tasted really, really good, just fresh, clean water. So remember that. But I have enough pouches of this water. This one is 6 ounces of water. And I have enough of these to rehydrate all the food in here. So all the food, all the water that I need to eat the food that I have is also in my 72-hour kit right here. Now I can hear some of you out there saying, well, yeah, but you have to drink water too. That is true. So admittedly, part of my 72-hour kit is not shown here. And that's not the point of this whole exercise, but I'll show you nonetheless. See how well the food all fits in and the water. So then what do you do with the food once you have it? Okay, this, by the way, is my entire 72-hour kit right here. This backpack and this. And I have this for the members of my family. But recognize that this, by the way, is our stove. You just need a backpacking stove, has pots and a burner inside and gas. That's enough for more than 72 hours for my entire family to eat the food that's in their 72-hour kits. If we need more than one of these, we can take it. But only one of us needs to carry it, right? Now let's talk about water. We just carry one of these water filtration systems. You can find these online. As long as you can find a source of water, you can filter it. Filter it and then boil it. Then you are safe. But here's the point. Ultimately, everybody, the cube is what facilitates having a real 72-hour kit in something that you can actually subsist on. Now, obviously, if you have long-term food storage in your home, you can subsist on that. But if you have to take off, just grab one of these, the backpack, and you can really survive and have the energy to do all the things that are required in an emergency when your heart rate's elevated, a stressful situation, because you have good food that you actually want to eat. So, as I talk to a lot of you guys at some of the trade shows and other things that I go to and attend, you'll see me pull out some of these bags from my food storage and my little stove, and I'll have hot meals then and there. But that's all coming because I have the Cube home freeze dryer. Cube Nation, don't forget all the many uses that the freeze dryer has. We keep having these live events because when we talk to you on the phone, when we see the emails that come through, or when we have long conversations at the trade shows, the thing that we keep recognizing is people look at the freeze dryer as either I can make a whole bunch of Skittles to sell, or two, I can make food storage and then I don't know what to do with it, okay? But we're here to educate you and help you know the Cube becomes a daily use in our house for all the different things that we use it for. So let's take a moment now and answer some of the questions and things that have come up. Let me take a look here. Okay. So this is a comment and a question from a viewer, Caroline, by the way, says she's really interested in making individual meals that have a protein, starch, and a vegetable. Amen. Simple, right? A problem that she's had is when she dehydrates irregularly shaped foods like stew, getting everything completely dry without restarting the dehydrator all over again is a challenge. Okay, well, Caroline, one of the things that I don't know in that is, are you using a dehydrator or a freeze dryer? But let's talk about the irregularly shaped things. Beef stew is a good example of that, right? A really hearty beef stew has these big chunks of stew meat. Remember the rule in freeze drying: the smaller the pieces, the faster and easier they dry. But that doesn't mean you have to do that. It doesn't mean you have to eat them that way either. The beef stew that I had in here, it has chunks that are an inch, maybe a little bit smaller, of stew meat. And it dries just fine when I put it in the freeze dryer. Later, when I rehydrate it, you have to pay attention to the things that you're rehydrating. Okay, if you're just rehydrating rice, for example, it's all going to rehydrate really fast. But the chunks of meat, they're going to take a little bit longer. So if you go buy off the shelf meals, for example, they're going to tell you you need to put in 7 ounces of boiling water and let sit for 4 minutes. Or some of them are 12 minutes. Some of them are 8 minutes. There is something to that, and that's because the chunks of beef, say in the beef stew, because they're bigger, they take a little bit longer to rehydrate. It will still do it, and the hotter the water, the faster it will happen. So it'll still work. Just make sure that you kind of pay attention. If it's not totally rehydrated, close it up, let it sit a little bit longer. If you need to, put all the beef stew back in your pot on your stove and heat it all together for a few minutes. It will rehydrate. It just takes a little bit longer for the different types of foods. Thanks, Caroline, for that. If you have more questions, please let us know. Let's look and see. Oh, Caroline does say she has a freeze dryer. In fact, she has the cube. So pay attention to how big things are. By the way, take the fats off of the pieces of beef as much as you can. That will help them to dry better. The fats don't really dry. The other thing to know is you can't over freeze dry something. So the green beans or the corn or things that are dry long before then, they can just stay in there and keep drying. So I think the real question here is perhaps the end of the cycle might come along and say the food is done. And the green beans, the corn, even the broth part of it, all of that are dry, and in the center of the beef, it's not quite dry. So that can happen depending on the percentage of, say, the beef chunks versus everything else, because it takes so much longer to pull water out of big chunks than small chunks. In that case, I'll bet you would find that if you cut your beef pieces in half before you freeze dried them, you'd have a lot better luck. Or when it says it's done, break your beef pieces apart. I know we all love these huge chunks, but break them apart and just put it all back in. The corn, the green beans, the carrots, all the rest of the stuff, they're fine to just keep drying. The real problem is that the sensors inside the cube can't measure the very, very small amounts of water that are finally coming out of the center of the big pieces of beef in any real measurable way. So yes, it is a challenge, and that's a challenge regardless of whatever brand and whatever apparatus you're using. In fact, I went and toured a commercial freeze drying facility not long ago, and one of the things that they talked about specifically was they have these chunks of beef that they then will freeze dry all in one batch. Now, granted, these freeze dryers, you can fit a car inside, right? So these are commercial. And the problem that they had in this is they're trying to freeze dry everything as fast as possible. And so some things, like corn, for example, freeze dry really fast. And other things, like zucchini and squash, for example, take a lot longer to freeze dry. And so they're trying to maximize the time of all of this. What it told me is it's not just us. Freeze drying is what it is. So my suggestion is cut your beef pieces down just a little bit. That's probably the best idea in this case. And while we do want these big chunks of beef that it's a lot easier to freeze dry them if they're small, and it's a lot easier to rehydrate them later. All right, let's check and see what else we have here. Okay, here is a question on this, and that is, let me make sure I understood it here. Oh, the question was, why put water in the Mylar bags instead of leave it in bottles? Well, the answer really, for me personally, was that because the bottles were irregularly shaped, they didn't really fit in the space that I needed. And once I open the bottle, then it's not sealed anymore, and it's harder to keep from leaking and all of that. So it was a preference thing for me. But these little pouches for 6 ounces, now some of these meals, they required 9 ounces of water. So it would take 1.5 of these. They have Ziplocs on them. And then I only have to worry about a small part of my water that isn't sealed totally, instead of now a cheap water bottle that maybe the lid doesn't fully seal and keep the water in. Maybe it will. Commercially packed water in water bottles, it'll store for a long time as well. It was just more of a preference and being able to fit it in the space that I had. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Question was, do we have a recommended stove to use? Not really, it's preference. I found this one because it was all self-contained, because I love to go backpacking and it was easy for me to use. There's lots of choices out there. I'm not going to tell you which one to get, other than if you get something big, it's hard to take with you. A lot of people will say that they'll get one of those big barbecue grills with a propane thing. Great. If you have the ability to carry it with you, then by all means do so. This was all self-contained. It's light, it's easy, it can go right in my backpack. So if I have to leave, if I have to bug out, as it were, without a vehicle, I can actually carry my backpack and carry this, and I have everything I need for those 72 hours. That was the goal of mine. Okay, I'm being told that we've got another oh, Caroline, thank you again. Talking about the water in plastic bottles. They have microplastics that leach into your water. That is an excellent point also. I've seen a lot of people out there that talk about how you should only store water in glass. And there's people out there that will store water in, say, mason jars because of that reason. Again, the light gets through, but if it's in a dark place, I suppose it's fine. I know microplastics are a recent concern that have come up, maybe because we didn't know about them or we didn't care to know about them sooner than that. So excellent suggestion. All right, Cube Nation, thanks for joining us again for another event. Please let us know what it is that you want to hear about. We keep trying to add more and more topics to this because we want you using your cube for more than just the fact that my apple tree produced a whole bunch of apples. Now I'm going to store it for the rest of the year. Don't do that, because then you're missing out on so many of the benefits that the cube actually offers in your home that most people don't even pay attention to. Okay? Get your 72-hour kits ready. I hope you never have to use them. But if they're packed like this one is, I actually do kind of hope you have to use them. Or maybe you use them a little bit differently, like another one of our customers who packs things like this, bins like this, full of meals. They do a lot of hamburgers, turkey burgers and things that they don't cook, but they season and seal up and freeze dry. Sorry, they freeze dry it and then seal it. And they have these, and they have a big RV. They just grab a couple of these and it takes care of their meals for the time that they're gone. So they've already got them prepped and ready, that don't take refrigerator space, that they don't need extra shelf space for, and they can do all of that, and it's just easy. Maybe that's why you build 72-hour kits. Less about emergency and more about going into the sequoias and enjoying the time there. But we all know it's a good idea, and the peace of mind of having something set aside for an emergency is great. And recycle it. Go through every few years and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to eat these and change these out. It's always a good idea. Cube Nation, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you get the notifications of these events coming up, so you get the notifications of the videos that we put out. We're constantly trying to give you more and more information through this pathway rather than having to create a novel of things that we think of every day. Oh, we should use the freeze dryer for this and this and this. And I keep hearing about all the reasons you use it. Keep telling us. Let's find out if it appears maybe we have one more comment or question coming through. We'll give it a moment for it to happen here. Next live event, 2 weeks from today in the evening. Again, we're going to talk about snacks for Valentine's Day that are unique. Things that you don't normally see or give away. Similar to what we were doing in Christmas, giving you events or snacks and things. And so we are going to talk about that. We are possibly going to talk about freeze drying the flowers that you get for Valentine's Day. How many of you have looked at the bouquet of flowers sitting on your table and going, this is so wonderful, I wish it could last more than 3 days, right? We're going to try it and see how it goes, and then come back and talk to you about it. We have seen others have success. It hasn't been as high on our priority list, but we're going to find out and let you know and show you all the information we have about it. Our last thing here is, again, from Caroline, and we appreciate all that you've contributed here, Caroline. We should invite you next time to come stand in front of the camera and tell all this. All of a sudden, a little bit nervous there, but anyway. So Caroline says, Mylar is a good choice for water because it doesn't break down the way that the polyethylene bottles do. That is true. The polyester in the plastic bottles breaks down, and that's where the microplastics come from. The Mylar does not break down. That's why it's also a choice for storing food in, because it does not break down the way that plastic bottles do. If you're going to do it, just make sure that you use filtered water, keep everything clean. The last thing you want to do is store contaminated water. But when you pull it out, don't be afraid to filter it and boil it again if you feel like you need to. The process that I went through to fill these, I am confident that I can use this water straight out of the Mylar when it comes to that. Thank you, Cube Nation. We're going to sign off. Remember to subscribe.